However you feel comfortable. It's your show, man.
Okay.
I'm along for the ride.
Well, it's weird to call someone that I've known as Mr. Armitage. I was like, oh, I've got to start calling him Dr. Armitage. And then you were like, no, it's okay. And I was like, oh no, I'm older now. I'm allowed to call you something else. Oh, hi. You're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky few that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I currently work, or used to work, at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So let's eat!
Like a rose.
I'd like to welcome our guest, Dr. Jeff Armitage. Much like the other doctors I have interviewed, we are dropping the formality per Jeff's request going forward. So don't come for me, audience. I feel weird about not being formal with him too, but that was his request. Leave me alone. On to the bio. Originally from St. Albans, Vermont, Jeff came to the great state of Ohio for medical school at The Ohio State University, followed up by his residency at the Miami Valley Hospital in Dayton. Then he moved on to private practice in Cincinnati. Per Jeff, he married, quote, and this is the most adorable quote of all time, the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, named Beth, and proceeded to have 3 amazing children. I was actually raised alongside them, having grown up not only in the same town, but also on the same street in the neighborhood, which is awesome and crazy and wonderful. And this is all full circle, and it's fine. I'm having an experience. Jeff's kids went on to choose the very easy and not at all demanding careers of being engineers. Literally all 3 of them. I can't even spell that word. And Jeff retired in 2018, but up until COVID was using his spare time to volunteer at the aptly named Good Samaritan Free Clinic. Jeff enjoys golf, chess, reading, traveling, and snorkeling in his spare time. He also writes and sings his own music. I better know Jeff from not only eating donuts at his house almost every Sunday growing up, but also because he quite literally saved my mom's life when a piece of steak got stuck in the back of her throat. No exaggeration, that actually happened. So he doesn't even remember his face. He's like, wow, I don't remember that. Literally saved my mom's life. Doesn't even remember it. That's how good of a person he is, folks. So Jeff, you have to tell us what made you want to become a doctor, why private practice, how'd you get here?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's a delight to be here and to see you again.
You too.
I think received gentle but constant pressure all growing up that the greatest profession in the world was to be a doctor. So before I can even remember, that was kind of the urging to do well in school and that kind of stuff. So, I think that's kind of how I started. And then when it looked like I might be able to get through the academics, well, then that's the way I went. So,
was that pressure from your parents or was that pressure from friends?
No, it was my parents. And when you say pressure, they just kind of said that's the greatest job. And I didn't know anything about jobs. So, all growing up, I had this attitude, well, that's the greatest job. If I can do it, let's go do it, So
okay.
That's what I did.
Were you inclined in sciences or what? How would you were?
Oh, yeah. I'm much more comfortable with science than reading log books and giving reports.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. What was your favorite subject in high school?
Other than the cheerleaders? Is that a subject?
Not a subject, Jeff. Not a subject.
That's why I didn't do so well then. It was always math and science all the way up.
And that just came easily to you?
A lot easier than language. Yeah.
I find that so fascinating because my brain is not wired that way whatsoever. So at what age had you decided, well, because being a doctor is the best job, I'm just going to set myself on that track? Was that like middle school, high school?
I'm sure it was in college when I got through about the first 2 years and was still doing well. I said, well, yeah, I'll go that way. Yeah.
And then when you did your residency, because I know a lot of doctors struggle with the choice of, okay, what kind of medicine do I want to practice? What made you choose private practice? Because there's some liability with that.
Well, I mean, I think I never had a model to be anything other than in private practice. If you're saying surgery versus psychiatry and that. Well, a lot of it is shaped by your experiences. I found, when I had my early surgical rotations, I found that I was in there standing around waiting to get in the OR suite for excessive periods of time, and I just didn't find that enjoyable. And then, psych never really appealed to me. My first clinical rotation was pediatric oncology.
Ooh.
And I instantly knew that I didn't want to watch kids die all my life. So I backed off of that completely. And then I just got interested in general adult medicine, and so that's how I went.
I just want to rewind a little bit. When you say in the OR suite waiting, does that mean literally speak to me like I know nothing, because I do.
Well, yeah, if you're on a surgical team, okay, and you do your hospital rounds and everything, but then they have a lineup of surgeries to do, and obviously there's big gaps in between. They run over, and all that while you don't go home and play pinochle. You're there just waiting for the next surgery, and particularly if you're in the trauma team, you can be waiting late into the night, and it's just, I found that not fun. I didn't find it fun. And they're fabulous, fabulously talented people with their hands and everything, but for me it was still a procedure, and it just wasn't my interest.
Sure, I understand that. I can imagine also there'd be an emotional peaks and valleys with the stop-start of, you think you're starting surgery at 2:00, so you're mentally preparing for it, and then you have to wait 2 hours and you're having to stay up. It's sort of like,
right,
waiting a year to do the Olympics, like the situation the athletes.
But first of all, I didn't have to do anything other than what they told me to do. I mean, I was still in training, so I didn't do any other procedure, but I was there trying to learn it, et cetera, et cetera. So,
got it.
So I don't give you the idea that I had to perform in the surgical suite. I never got that far. So.
Okay. And then when you were in private practice, did you ever find yourself wishing you had, gone a different route?
It's impossible not to look at the various medical fields and not be interested in them. Cardiology or pulmonary or whatever. So they're all fascinating to me, but I never really felt like there was just one thing I wanted to do. So that's why I did a lot of hospital work for the first probably 20 years of my practice. So just general adult medicine in the hospital, was great for me. I loved it.
What does that look like when you say you did a lot of hospital work? Would that mean your patients would be admitted and then you'd be on the floor, or were you also working on the floor?
Well, when I was getting into practice, you're kind of desperate for work, really. Well, yeah, you're still trying to build your practice, and so the thing is, I was with a group that we would accept everyone's admissions all over town. And, not all over town. I went to a few hospitals, but we would take anybody that wanted to admit patients to us, we took them. And we were really successful, like Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Everybody would kind of dump their patients on us and then come back the day after Christmas and take them back. So they, no, it's common. We were not happy with being on call for the holidays, because we really got beat up on the holidays.
Okay.
But that was our role. That's how we built our practice.
Were you able to poach any patients on Christmas and New Year's, and they came to you after? Not poach is the wrong word, but...
Well, see, we would never do that, because then they'll never send us patients again. So you made it really clear up front that you were Dr. So-and-so's patient, and we're here trying to help him take care of this. But you don't want to, they were still giving us business the rest of the year too, but it was just... so you can't really say, no, I want to take patients on Christmas, but every other day, well, you're never going to get anybody, because that's when they really want you. So
sure.
So that's how we started up,
Okay. And so then at what point in your career did you no longer have to accept the Christmas, New Year's patients? Or did that ever happen?
Well, yeah. We basically, then I was developing my own practice as an outpatient in the office. Okay. So, after the first probably 10 years, I no longer needed that kind of work, and we backed off and just took our own patients.
We've had other doctors on who have expressed the bureaucracy and business side of medicine they didn't anticipate and didn't know was going to be sort of a part of the process. Did you feel prepared for the business bureaucracy side of medicine?
Well, first of all, it was certainly not something I liked. Okay. I, in fact, took an 18-month Xavier MBA medical business course to see if I wanted, get involved in some of the hospital medical staff management. Found out very clearly that I had no interest in that at all. None. So I had the same dislike for managing the private practice, and it's just not exciting. I wasn't interested in it. And then handling the staff issues was even harder. I mean, I had a great relationship with my nurse, but, I didn't have a great relationship with everybody else's nurse. And finding yourself in a supervisor role, an incompetent supervisor on people that you don't know, whatever, but that are very important to your partner, it's just uncomfortable. It's not anything I wanted to have anything to do with. But, you just kind of, you have to.
You have to just do it.
That's part of the game.
Yeah. Because when you go into private practice, it is opening a small business, essentially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We own the business. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to not only manage life-saving procedures and medicine and all of the things that go with being a doctor, you also are, I can't imagine the stress of that.
Well, that wasn't, it was the medical part that was the stressful, not the business stuff. I mean, if I blew that, well, nobody died,
Hello.
So, yeah. So anyway, and I should say, later we did sell our practice to the hospital.
What is that? Can you get into the intricacies of what that looks like? Because a lot of private practice doctors are doing that now.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, the hospital came to us, and what it was we were kind of in between two different hospital systems, competing hospital systems, each wanting more admissions, and we admitted a lot of people every year. So we initially went through discussions with one hospital system. And just kind of fell down. Just didn't work out. Their needs were different. They were really more interested in developing tighter relationships with subspecialty groups than primary care. This was the phase when primary care was kind of getting phased out of the hospital, meaning, when I started practicing, there wasn't, intensive care people necessarily. So we were in the intensive care. We were managing the ventilators. We were doing the swan dances. Well, as specialists came on and were more available, obviously they did it better than us, and we moved that care in their direction. Well, then they tended to have the preponderance of the in-house patients. They were involved more and bigger producers for the hospital. So they wanted to have a tighter relationship with, say, cardiology or orthopedic surgery or these people. So that was what they were developing. This is going back now.
Sure.
So our kind of major hospital didn't really strike an agreement with this, and then another hospital came in and kind of offered us a dream come true contract. So we took it. And we worked with them, oh boy, it might have been 8 years or so.
Just to get into kind of some of the nuance, is there an advantage for you to have your practice purchased? Does that mean that they then handle the business side of things and you're no longer doing that? Or?
Correct. The big advantage, other than obviously having none of your own overhead in your practice if you go bankrupt.
Hello.
Obviously, but the big thing is they could step in with some help managing it. They had people from the hospital that were available if we needed them as nurses or phone receptionists, and at the time there was a lot of contracting work going on. Hospitals were aligning with insurance companies and coming up with products, and they needed physicians to be involved in those. And so if you were with a bigger group, more visible, rather than a small private practice, you get into those groups much easier.
I didn't understand. I didn't know, I guess, that sort of business nuance existed, and that's a juicy carrot as a doctor, I would imagine, to think that you could be into the bigger.
Well, the bad part is corporate interests don't necessarily align with the patient's interests.
What? That feels crazy.
I know that might be shocking to you, and but in any event, so when you're, I never wanted to be aligned with anyone other than the patient, period, in any way. And as the hospital systems became more and more, they had more and more of their own interests that they tried to influence us to pursue, which is kind of a delicate way to put it. But the problem is, their interests, and they also had the problem of managing these physician groups, which physicians often are not very receptive to that. So that's a kind of a difficult thing. And so they really, a lot of the managers just truly didn't know what we were doing. I mean, and things went on to. The other thing that kind of happened is we stopped getting cost of living raises, and they would just use that raise as bonuses, so that I would get bonus based on my performance, based on what the corporation wanted me to do.
Wow. So,
that's just a steady growing influence that occurred in the practice, and it was not fun. As time went on, more and more of this bonus money became your income, and not just a perk. And so they're more and more influential in how the practice is made. And the thing that bothers you is, as things went on, for example, I take care of a variety of patients, but the people that were managing me said, well, I really don't know how well he takes care of pneumonia, but I can see how many tetanus shots he gives, and I know how many times he orders a cholesterol, so we'll bonus him for that. But, that really didn't reflect how good a doctor I was. They just picked some target things that they can manage and said, okay, well, this is what your bonus is going to be, which was not just a bonus, because after a while, cost of living raise, it gets to be something significant in your income. So anyway, I know that's awkward.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
but also, bonuses are taxed differently than a cost of living raise would be taxed.
Well, you're ahead of me there. I know that's probably true.
Which means you're seeing even less of that money, and then they get a different write-off if it's a salary increase as opposed to a bonus.
See, I don't know that side of it. Yeah,
that's so gross.
But all this thing happens gradually until it becomes more impressive, and then basically I and everyone in my original group, except one guy, retired. Mostly because of that. Because of that influence, corporate interests were not really in line with the patient interests all the time. And it was never comfortable when that happened.
That's disappointing too. And you can see, so I guess you've sort of answered this, but if you were getting out of, medical school today, do you think you would have even gone into medicine if the landscape looked the way that it looks now with that much corporate influence? Would you choose to be a doctor still?
It's still a fabulous career. You get to, it's a great field of science, fascinating field of science, and the people are just wonderful. The people are wonderful. You get some that are not your favorite, but overall, that's just a great thing. It isn't the practice of medicine that bugs you. It's the corporate influence, being managed, that kind of thing. Well, let's face it, that's the case of everybody's job. A lot of people have jobs that they like, but they don't like their manager, or they don't like, Now, I wouldn't run off to another career. The job is fabulous. Medicine is fabulous. There's influences that you don't like, but name a job that's perfect.
Sure. So you would say in 2021 you would still
be a doctor. Absolutely.
Okay. And we're going to get into that later, actually. I'm just going to, in real time, edit myself. Also, just really quick, audience, we are, because it is still COVID times, we are very lovingly in Jeff's garage, sitting 6 feet apart. And what you are hearing is a refrigerator in the garage, but it's not, you probably are used to it now. And tough, because these are COVID times and this is real history happening that we're going to all remember. So I don't want to hear about the sound quality, because that's just the way it is, folks. Not that anyone would, because we have the best listeners ever. Okay. So when you decided to retire, and you had said most of the fellows within the same sort of class, I guess.
My original group, I was in private practice.
Oh, okay. Guys. So with 5 other,
and then we joined the huge group when the hospital bought my practice. Now I'm part of a huge group, but those original core guys, we faded.
Okay. And all sort of walked out at the same time?
No, we trickled off one at a time, but there's one guy still practicing.
Bless him.
Yeah.
And okay, so at the Good Samaritan Hospital where you were volunteering, what were you doing pre-COVID?
Oh, I was just doing what I always did.
But volunteering. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I was whining about the corporate influence. Well, there's none there because I didn't do any billing. I didn't have any obligation.
Wow.
Now I was just practicing, doing whatever the heck I wanted. That was really good, and I really liked it. And I hope to go back there, but I can't visit my grandkids if I go down and get exposed to COVID, and then so.
Sure.
For now, I wait till I get my vaccine, and then I'll be back down there.
So that's a good transition question. So you will get the vaccine?
Oh, absolutely.
Don't feel qualms about it?
I absolutely not. I think definitely everyone should get vaccinated. Until everyone does, till we get herd immunity, our life won't change. I mean, for example, even if we get the vaccine, okay, and I have the vaccine, I still have to go wear a mask if I'm going to Kroger's.
Why?
Because I can still. The vaccines work, the ones we have now, works by inhibiting the virus getting into the cell. Now, the virus is still on the cell. I'll still inhale and if I come into contact with people, I will have the virus. It doesn't infect me. But if I go see you in the grocery store, I can infect you. So until we have herd immunity, we're going to be wearing masks and socially isolating and washing our hands, and that's just going to be the way of it. And every year we'll get an updated vaccine.
Is this the new normal?
Well, I think I think it's going to be. I think we'll get a vaccine every year. I'm hoping we develop enough herd immunity that we don't have to wear masks all the time and isolate. I truly do. But, I mean, unfortunately, it's become such a political thing that we have a great number of people that are not going to get vaccinated. And if we don't achieve herd immunity, I don't know how we can resume our life. If you cavalierly don't mind infecting someone, you can resume your life. But, I mean, how can you live with that? Yeah.
Well, some people can, unfortunately. Can you just go, this isn't about that, but I am very curious. Herd immunity, can you explain, because that terminology gets used a lot. Mm-hmm. Can you, from a medical perspective, explain what you mean by that?
Well, and they say somewhere around 70%. If 70% of the population has either had it or had a vaccine, then the chances of dramatic new exposure are vastly reduced. And that's when you can start kind of resuming a normal lifestyle, because when you go into the stores, you have a much less chance of being exposed. So
you had explained, because we had talked about this a couple months ago, you had explained that you were in practice, and please correct me if I'm remembering this incorrectly. You were in practice when SARS kind of became an issue, and you had mentioned that there are some similarities, but that the explosion of this has been sort of interesting and different. What is am I remembering that incorrectly?
I of course never saw a case of SARS, but you heard about it in Asia, and it is a coronavirus, just as COVID-19 is a coronavirus. The difference being, SARS was very deadly to the people it ran into, but it didn't have the contagious risk that this virus does. I don't know the specifics, but I would suspect that a higher number of people that got SARS died from it than die from COVID-19. But you have such an unbelievable number of people that are getting infected that we have almost 2 million dead worldwide, which is astonishing.
It's very sad, and I don't have a different synonym for that because it just is. But when you say that the contagious, the contagion path, I don't know how the medical terms, I'm just making things up, but for how contagious SARS was or is versus COVID-19, do you think that is why COVID-19 became a global pandemic, or do you think it's also mismanagement of how to control the virus itself, not just here but globally? Or do you think it's both, or do you think it's strictly just for how contagious it is?
So, you have multiple aspects of a virus, okay? What type of inoculum you need to actually get infected, how you would get this inoculum, whether it's eating, breathing, whatever, injections, intercourse, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a matter of how the virus is going to infect you and what amount of inoculum or how many different viral particles have to be there. I mean, if you get one COVID-19, you might be able to fight that off and not have a problem unless you have some kind of serious immune problem. So you have that. Number two, if you have a virus that's really contagious but doesn't kill you, it's kind of a lot of times indistinguishable from, quote, the common cold, right? So it doesn't scare us either. But when you get that combination of a deadly virus and a virus that's really contagious, then you have the makings for a pandemic. And like, for example, that's basically it. And those two things can occur from mutations. If you take influenza that we have every year, everybody knows about it, and they yawn about it. Still, 50,000 people a year die from it, right? Well, if you get that influenza and it suddenly mutates, so it's a lot more deadly, and let's say our vaccine misses, because they guess on the vaccine, right? I mean, it's just a guess. They're trying to figure out how to create it every year. So if they miss on the vaccine and it turns really deadly, you can have another pandemic from influenza even later this year. I mean, it could happen. No, it hasn't. I haven't seen anything. But that's what's going on. And the other thing about COVID is that there's such a huge amount of virus out there. We got a vast number of people with COVID, and that mutation continues, and it's like occurs every so often, maybe 15 days or so. So if you have 3 cases in the world that mutate with, 2 million viruses, well, you're not going to see that. But if you have a vast reservoir of virus that are also mutating, then these viruses can change rather quickly. I mean, in an alarming way. Obviously, there's huge areas of non-life-threatening components to that genetic material. So, I mean, it has to be the spot-on mutation that would make COVID more deadly. I think that the more recent viral mutations we're seeing are more contagious, but not more deadly on a case-by-case basis, so that we're seeing more deaths because there's way more cases, but it's because it's way more. There's not a higher percentage that are dying. It's just that there's so many more people getting infected with it.
So is influenza a type of coronavirus?
No, that's a different virus.
Totally
I was just using that because we're all comfortable with influenza, but still a lot of people die from influenza every year.
And you can get a vaccine against that strain, or the guesstimated version of that strain.
Yeah, they try to anticipate, what's going to be there to try to protect us. Yeah.
Something that has come up a lot is the speed with which this vaccine against COVID-19 was developed is making a lot of people nervous to take it. So could you speak to that?
I'm not a super special on this. All I can tell you is what I've read, okay? And I have no insight to the drug companies. But just as an overview, when you get some of these other vaccines, they grow the virus in this amalgam of gunk, okay? They grow that virus. They try to break it all down and, chop it all up and, inject it in you so that you have exposure to it. And then your immune system can react to it. But that's not a very pure vaccine, okay? I mean, you just got a bunch of junk. Egg, they grow it on an egg medium and stuff. So if you're allergic to eggs, well, you got a problem. Well, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's not a pure thing. But it's my understanding that this is just a remarkable technological advance in vaccine, in that they sequenced the genome of this virus, found how they could block it penetrating the cell, created this in a non-active format, so you'll react to it, whatever, and then by a lot of chain reactions, made incredible amounts of it. But it's all very pure. It's not all chopped up. It's not all this other stuff that you get in all these other vaccines.
Sure.
This is a really pure vaccine. I mean, in terms of what's active in you. So from that standpoint, I think the vaccine is, number one, it's a technological advance from what I've read. And again, I don't know anything more than what you read. But the internet has to be truthful. Right? Everything
on it. Yep,
perfect.
every page.
Yeah, I'm sure I know exactly what's going on. Anyway, So I think it's a technological advance. Number two, this death toll that we have here, we have sacrificed 375,000 people in America. If we don't do something, that's not going away. Okay, what we've had only, I don't know what percentage of the population, we're nowhere near a herd immunity that's going to slow this thing down. So when you say, oh, well, I'm not going to get it. Well, I mean, that death, okay, then that's what you're going to accept from now on. Every year, 350,000 people are going to die from this. That's kind of quite a decision to make. Now, are there side effects? Yeah, I have read some side effects. I have some tough allergy problems that can occur to it. And I'm sure we don't even know all of them because they had to roll this thing out so fast. But I just don't think and I truly would like to resume my life, So yeah, I'll definitely do it. And I think everyone should get it. And if you don't get it, you kind of are Typhoid Mary here.
Yeah.
I think you are a danger to everyone you see, and assumingly, you have to assume you're seeing your family and people that you love a lot, and you are putting them at great risk. So that's a decision I would feel very uncomfortable with people making.
Yeah. What Jeff's not saying is you're a selfish asshole. I'll say it. He didn't say it. I'm saying it. Get the damn vaccine. But whatever. I have no strong opinions about this. Just one more Corona question, then we can stop talking about it. You were explaining in a way that was totally understandable and I'm going to mess up the words, it's like aerosol, but there's a medical, it's like it's saying that's how it's passed. It's through the aerosol. I forget the word because you would explain like singing. I don't know what word you use, but I found it so fascinating.
Well, there's the macroscopic globules and the microscopic globules. Is that in the aerosol?
Aerosol. Yeah. What's the word when it's made into aerosol? Aerosols. Is there somewhere? Maybe I made that. You're making face. I made that up.
No, I mean,
I've made it up. Yeah, I've made it up. That's okay. It's all right. I do that a lot.
That's why we watch the show, because you make this stuff up.
Well, so could you explain to people why oddly singing and working, because shockingly in Ohio, gyms are fully open, and we drive past them all the time, and I'm like, nope, no masks anywhere. And can you explain why the particular activities of working out and singing just create such an unnecessary spread and risk?
Well, if you have COVID and you expire or cough or sing, then you're going to project this in an aerosol manner. And then there's two major, I don't know if it's actually distinct lines, but there's a macroscopic globule and a very microscopic globule. The viral content of the macroscopic globule is very high and very contagious. The microscopic globule, it's still in doubt, okay? So, but the thing is, if I sit here and I have it, and I just project microscopic, globules all day long, but I sit here in this one spot, well, suddenly now the desktop has enough virus to infect someone. Okay, so we talk about a 6-foot radius, and that's the macroscopic globules. Okay, that's where you would anticipate they go. The microscopic globules will go much farther than that, but at least what I was reading, and it's I don't know whether it's true or not, but they weren't confident that the microscopic globules would infect you. So that's why the guideline is about 6 feet rather than 23 feet that you may project your microscopic globules.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if that is what you were asking or not.
Well, it's very helpful. And so is it a risk to go to the gym right now?
Well, I mean, if you go, wear a mask, wipe everything down that you touch, okay? But you have to understand, the last guy was just breathing hard all over the weights or treadmill or whatever.
Or just in that area.
Yeah. So if and assuming, it can stay aerosolized too. Anyway, but so if you assume that cleaning role to protect yourself, you may be able to keep yourself safe. But I don't know that the gym is doing that for you. I mean, I would not trust everything you touch, you should clean.
Yeah.
And So anyway, I would rather just get fat than go to the gym.
Go to the gym and die. You'll die
right.
hot, but you'll be dead.
Man,
And do you think kids should be back in school? And then we can get away from this topic.
Well, so here's, that's a really difficult thing. I mean, the obvious thing is, quote, oh, yeah, kids, they don't get it. They don't die. Okay, well, there are a few of them that die. Okay. So then are you going to say, okay, let's just go uneducated. Let's see how our quality of life looks doing that. That's not good either. Now, then the idea of Zoom or video remote education, everybody says, oh, it's terrible. Well, we didn't really try very hard. I can't help but feel that a lot of things can be taught that way. And if we can generate a safe teaching environment for the smaller number of topics that really require you to be there, like, for example, a classroom of 30 kids, I mean, who's kidding who? That's not safe.
That's not working
Right.
either, yeah.
Now, a classroom of 6 kids done several times a day, using that same space that cleaned afterwards, maybe that's possible. And so if you could do the majority of these classes, virtually or, remotely, and then only bring them in for the topics that really can't be done very well. I mean, that's what I was hoping to see happen. And, that kind of transitions into a whole nother issue. We are now, creating such huge debt for college kids, and we're destroying them.
Yeah.
Now, if you look in the future and you say, okay, how can we improve the quality of life for my grandkid or maybe great-grandkid? Well, one of the top things you can do in a global economy is get educated. Yeah. So it's not like it's a minor thing. This is a major thing that our military and everything else is going to be dependent upon. So we've got to figure it out. So right now we've got college kids go to school and come home with $100,000 worth of debt, and that just can't happen. We've got to start educating people, 2 or 3 times as many people at 1/2 to 1/3 the cost. If we are going to get enough people educated to compete with China and India. I think this is something, and this COVID experience is given us a huge time to take a look at teaching people remotely, because I don't think you need to pay $80,000 a year to go to Harvard for 1 year if a lot of it can be done. I mean, how difficult would it be to teach intro calc and intro biology, all these intro courses? Nothing changes. I mean, they keep changing the textbooks and charging you for a new textbook. That's crazy. But now maybe the second and third year, when you're really getting into more specialty work in your career, maybe then you got to go there. Maybe you got to do. But if you could get 2 years done remotely at home, you could save people an awful lot of money. So anyway, I kind of went off the deep end, but that's why you asked me here. You knew that's what I was going to do.
That was the goal. It's very interesting. You're answering all these questions, and all of these things are inextricably linked, because we could say that part of why people are having their own theories about, the treatment of COVID, even though they're not medical professionals, is due to a lack of education. I mean, we really could, and that's not to say that if you have a college degree, that's a guarantee. And it's not to say that, some people that with 4-year degrees don't also believe that it's whatever, but it is an interesting sort of inextricably linked idea that as soon as education became third priority in the country, things shifted. Mm.
Well, the bad part is what you're bringing up. And again, I'm in left field here again, is that I know that a lot of the impetus to teach people that COVID's no big deal, that if you don't take care of yourself, it's just going to go away. And if you do isolate, well, then you don't support who, are done by people that are extremely well educated, that know darn well these people are going to get sick and die. Okay. Yes. So my real rejection of this whole thing is they have sacrificed these people.
Yes.
I mean, they're not stupid. They know it's there, but they say, you go on out there and you get exposed, and some of you are going to die, but that's okay. That's okay, because we need to maintain power.
It's murder.
That I have difficulty with. I mean, I see no justification, and that one's tough. It does launch into the other religious thing because a lot of religions feel God's going to protect you, and so you don't need to protect. But you don't get to choose how God protects you.
Come on, Jeff. That's right. That's right. That's right.
What if the way God's protecting you
is the vaccine
and the scientists teaching you to isolate and not gather and blah? Maybe that's the way He's trying to protect you. Well, so that's a difficult thing too because I don't think that they could do their sermons remotely. I mean, I just don't think you have to do these things. I think people are dying because of it. I can't justify it.
And shout out to the churches that are doing that. And there are some pastors and some priests and there are some people in the religious world that are very aware of it. But I agree with your statement. And I have heard that if I get it, I get it. And that is from people I love. And that is a sad thing to try and not discuss because okay, well, this comedy podcast is crushing it. I hope everyone's laughing and having the best time. I'm sorry I brought up COVID, but I had to ask Jeff because we had a fascinating conversation a couple months ago and I instantly was like, I'm getting him on the podcast. I'm asking him everything. Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed your apps. We're going to go on to the entrees after a quick break. We are back, and now it is time for the entrees. Now, I consider being a doctor customer service, but there are also other jobs I assume you've had in your lifetime. So we're going to go through that list right now. What was your first job ever where the government took taxes out of your...
I was stuffing paper. It was I was putting ads in the newspaper in the wee hours of the morning.
Oh, what did that look like?
Well, it was, I don't know. We would gather in some garage someplace at midnight and just start cramming the stuff in the paper and passing it on.
See, I instantly think that's how you get murdered. That would be a scary job for me.
Yeah, that wasn't that enjoyable. No.
Okay. How many customer service jobs have you had? And we obviously know being a doctor is one. I wouldn't count the stuffing because you didn't interact with customers, right? When you were stuffing the ads in the newspaper.
No.
Were there other jobs that you've had where you're interacting?
I was a waiter.
Oh, you were?
I waited tables. Where? Yeah. A restaurant called the Governor Smith Inn. This is when I was in high school in Vermont.
Okay.
And so I was perhaps not the world's best waiter.
Wait, why?
I don't know. It's just you would go into it with the enthusiasm and drive that you took there. And it was never my life's long ambition to be a waiter. Not that I have anything wrong with people waiting. That's they're great people and it's a great job. But it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. So I went in with that kind of attitude.
Okay. So. Okay. So you were a bit disconnected or detached, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay. So people probably bothered you when you were doing that?
It wasn't so much that they bothered me, but it's just,
you just didn't care?
I think it takes a lot of attention and interpersonal reaction. You got to break the ice with people. You serve them. You got to pay attention to them. And if you have a bad attitude, I think that will reflect on
your performance with them. Okay.
And it wasn't that I hated it at all. I just,
Okay.
It was.
Did you work in college at all, or was it just you were a server at the Governor's Inn in high school, and that was your only job in high school? And then,
well, in the summers I worked, but I didn't try to work and go to class.
So what did you do? So we've got the Governor's Inn, doctor. What other customer service jobs have you had?
Well, it wasn't customer service. I mean, I worked in a factory slinging pipe.
Ooh, rough. No, that's not customer service. But
I used the window washers, the 4-story window washers. Yeah, so that's not really customer service.
Would you go up in the lift?
No, I had a pole.
Oh, okay.
But still, the 4-story column of water kind of weighs on you after.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's heavy. Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a weird job?
Well, it was kind of strange. The windows didn't look that much better to me before and after.
So you could lie and be like, no, I definitely did that window. What are you talking about?
Look at that. It looks great. Yeah.
Okay. So basically 2 customer service jobs is where we're landing.
I guess so. That's sad but true.
That's what's sad. Yeah. You were a doc. I mean, your entire professional career over, a couple decades was customer service. So multitudes of them isn't necessarily a good thing. I've had way too many. Which was your favorite job of all the jobs you've had?
Being a physician.
Okay.
For sure, yeah.
Least favorite?
Well, I guess there was only one other job, right?
Well, you can pick from any of the.
Any of the jobs?
Yeah.
Oh, the least favorite for me was slinging pipe in the west side of Cleveland. That was rough.
Yeah. When you say sling and pipe, what do you mean?
Well, there was a machine, and it was a pipe, and you put it in this machine. It was a 24-foot pipe. You put it in the machine, and it would taper male and female ends, and you take it off and walk and dump it on a tray and go get the next one. And
God bless the people that do repetitive factory work.
Oh.
I know it's not customer service, but the mental taxation of how mundane that is, I mean, God bless them. It's the same thing. People that work in fast food restaurants and are frying fries and flipping burgers all day. Like, there is that mental piece that we rarely discuss of having to keep yourself engaged
over and over again. Yeah.
God bless. And then you didn't have podcasts to listen to like this one in your ear when you were slinging pipe. So
I don't know how I
don't know
made
how
it.
you made
I don't
it.
know how I made it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone made it before this particular podcast. Okay, what's the weirdest thing you've been asked to do whilst on the clock? And as a doctor, feel free. We've gotten some really insane answers on this, so don't feel like you have to censor yourself. In fact, the audience prefers you don't.
The weirdest thing. Now that one's a tough one. I mean, everything I do is so weird. How can you?
Can you give us a couple examples of weird things?
No, I can't. Well, I mean, I will. Nah, I guess I don't feel comfortable telling that story just because of a patient interaction thing. So we'll skip that one.
Is there a way to anonymously present that story, or do you think that patient might figure out?
I think the person would. It's such a bizarre story.
Okay,
the person
they would know.
No, and
okay,
yeah. I mean, that's the hard thing. You don't ever want anyone to feel that they are unusual, if you will say. So
you're
anyway.
much kinder than most guests.
Yeah.
Most guests want to go in on this. I could tell the story of you saving my mom's life, which was pretty weird.
I gotta admit, I don't remember that.
That's okay.
No.
We were having, I think it was just flank steak at dinner, and we were all eating, and my mom got really quiet, and she wasn't necessarily fully choking, but her airway was definitely blocked. And she had a piece of flank steak that was stuck in her throat. So the Heimlich wasn't an option because her airway wasn't fully blocked. And the first thought was, we have to call Dr. Armitage. We have to call him. And so I think my dad, or certainly my mom, didn't call you. I remember being old enough that I could have, functionally dialed a phone. I wasn't like 3, but we called and you came right over and you had a flashlight and I think hemostats and maybe something else. And you took a look and her airway was like partially blocked. And so you went in and pulled out the piece of steak that would have eventually choked her. And then you were just like, all right, everybody have a great night, and went about your business and just didn't make it a big deal. And we were all like, oh my gosh, like, of course, so grateful, and obviously still remember that story. And that just speaks volumes to who you are, that you're like, oh, I saved another life. Okay, cool. I don't remember. I mean, it does. It's very humble. It's
very kind. I still don't remember that. That's this dementia must be settling in faster than I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely, I mean, maybe it was a dream, but I definitely have vivid memories of you being in our house and saving my mom's life. I don't know. My sister will have to verify this. My mom could probably verify this. I thought that I mean, I feel like did you get called on a lot from non-patients to handle weird situations? Like, that's a weird thing.
Well, no, I got called on quite a lot to help out where I could. I was very happy to do that. Friends and neighbors, and so that's never a problem. That wasn't really work at all.
That's you're very kind. All right, so folks, he's not going to give it up. He's not going to expose anyone. He's too nice.
Well, I'm pounding on my chest. Yeah, they just can't see.
Yeah, he's too nice. All right, we'll skip that question. Okay, so this one I'm going to change the question a little bit, because the question is actually, what incident made them ask to speak with a manager? But did you ever have patients, because I know for doctors, reviews are such a big deal, and I would imagine as the corporate influence increased, you had to answer for patients' opinions probably more. So was there ever a patient that complained about you or wrote a review about you that was negative, and then you were spoken to about it?
Well, you're always running late, and obviously, people would be not happy with me for running late, and and the corporation would, reflect that, because they do keep track of that if you're late. So I had my share of that, sure, and then some people don't get what they want. I was not a big pain pill, sleeping pill person. So if they came in looking for that, they weren't happy with me when I didn't give it to them. So I heard some of that too. So.
Were you able to suss out the people that were potentially pill shopping, as they call it?
Well, every new doctor that goes into practice, the first 3 months, they see a bunch of drug-seeking patients. Well, that's just part of the game.
Is that because that patient would be new to them, so they don't necessarily know that this person is pill shopping?
They don't know. You don't know the patient. They don't know you. They want to know if you're going to give them their Percocet or their sleeper or whatever they want. And so every doctor faces that. Certainly primary care. I don't know about some specialties, but everybody's dealing with that all the time. There's a lot of drug-seeking behavior, and you have to learn how to do that. I mean, you decide based on your performance whether you're going to be that person that grows your practice by appealing to them, or if you're going to say, "No, I'm going to let you guys go. I'll try to build something else."
So did any of those people ever complain about you?
Well, that was earlier in my practice, but you still had drug-seeking people all the time. But, I didn't even pay attention to that stuff. I mean, if they complain because you didn't give them Percocet, I mean, there's no manager in the world that's going to say that's a problem.
Sure.
So that really wasn't. The problem is, it sounds trivial, but they're really good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, they are really present that they're really suffering, and it often takes looking at their past medical history to find out if they truly have a back problem or if they truly that's the hardest part of it. I mean, it's not like you can say, "Oh, you want this?" No, don't consider it. Because there are times when I did use it. I mean, there are people that need it, that have lung cancer or whatever, and have terrible, terrible pain.
So was it literally just looking at their medical history that was able to help you decipher if they were pill seeking or?
Well, I mean, some people you developed a trust for what they, and you trusted them, and other people you didn't. And it's hard to describe how to do that. I mean, it's a feel. And the people that you developed a trust for, you get their record and you look and see, trying to find a way to take care of them. And if it is pain pills or sleepers or whatever you need, well, then that's what you do. If there's a case where you're not comfortable with it and you look at the record and you really just can't find a concrete reason to be using it, then you try to wean them off it. And
what is that conversation like?
Well, it's never very comfortable because they want something that you're not able to provide. So, I mean, they don't want to be weaned off, or that would be what they came in and asked you for. Help me wean off. They want the drug. They don't want to be weaned off. So, no, that's never fun. There's a lot of conversations that aren't fun in medicine.
I would imagine. And do they prepare you for that in school, or you just get good at them by practice?
How do you prepare someone to tell them that they have cancer? I mean, Oof. How do you do that? I mean, you can act like you can, but until you go in there and try to do it, and it's not that easy.
I can't imagine. Okay, you sort of already answered this, but the last straw that got you out of the job. So I guess we'll ask it in the waiter job. What was the last straw that made you quit that job?
I graduated from high school and went on to college.
That was it, just
that
timing.
Was it, yeah.
Okay. Well, you seem just so unhinged. So I'm surprised you didn't just flip a table and light the building on fire, because you have such a volatile personality.
I probably did.
No, I believe you.
Probably, yeah.
I believe you. You're so, you're unwell. Have you ever fired a patient and said, you can no longer be a part of my practice?
Oh, yeah.
What makes that happen?
Well, first of all, when the relationship breaks down, you want to, like, for example, I've had a patient that came in with his wife with dementia, and he would not stop driving his car. Okay. So I tried to talk to them as best as I could and made it clear. The wife was totally on board.
Oh, she was?
Oh, yeah, she didn't. Wow. But he was, a big macho guy, and he was in control. But the problem was, in that setting, I had to call the sheriff.
Oh, wow.
To say, look, this guy is obviously not fit to drive a car. Please come to my office and follow him home and deal with this. Well, obviously, that's not the kind of patient that you're going to hang on to. So yeah, but you run into stuff like that, and obviously a lot of the patients that if they're not taking the drug the way you want them to, if they come in and you're convinced that they have a bad back, and I give them some pain pills to last for 10 days, and it's gone in 2 days, that's a problem. Patients that then forge your signature on further drugs.
Did that happen to you?
Oh, yeah. Well, that happens, yeah.
Meaning they stole like a
prescription pad and will go to the pharmacy. And the pharmacists are very good at this kind of stuff. That's their... But, yeah, you get a call from the pharmacist saying, did you do this? Nope. Well, obviously, that kind of patient.
I mean, isn't that a federal offense?
Oh, yeah, it's against the law. It's against the law.
So then is there...
Oh, yeah. The pharmacists pick it up and call the police. And
they do?
Oh, yeah.
And so then the police show up in real time?
Well, not to my office, but...
To the pharmacy.
They investigate it. Okay.
Yeah.
But wow. I mean, that's a patient you can't continue to see. Yeah.
So then would those patients ever call you and have the gall to try and get another appointment, and then your receptionist is left saying,
sure,
you can't have an appointment?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, God bless your poor receptionist. How awkward. God bless any receptionist that has to have that conversation.
Yeah, that's. But I mean, for example, I still have to provide emergency care for a month.
You do?
Oh, yeah. If you fire a patient, you got to give them the opportunity to get health care. You can't just abandon them. So, yeah. So you could fire someone and they come back and need some help in that intermediate period of time.
Has that happened to you too?
Oh, yeah.
And so then you will treat them? But what about the liability?
Well, I spent my career liable for any mistake I make, So
sure.
you obviously the things that you do, you try to document carefully and make sure that, what you're doing is standard of care. And so, yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine. So then after that 30 days, would you then say...
Well, then there's no, they're not my patient anymore. I have to notify them in writing.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have 30 days where, they for example, if there was a diabetic on insulin that I fired and they ran out of insulin 2 days later, I can't say tough.
Yeah.
I got to take care of them until they can reasonably get other health care.
Sure.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that part of the Hippocratic Oath, or is that an actual documented legal obligation?
I don't. It's not part of the Hippocratic Oath.
It is not. Okay.
But it's. I mean, the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I literally never knew what it was.
Yeah.
I just knew that was a thing.
So, but I'm just saying that I'm sure came about because someone fired him and someone didn't get care and had an adverse reaction, and there was some lawsuit that happened, and we learned from that and don't pursue that. We don't want to do that.
Were you sued ever as a doctor?
I never. I had a case where a patient sued me for dismissing her from my practice. And so I was sued, but they didn't win it or anything.
No, of course, because you had documented why you had dismissed her.
Yeah.
Well, this one's a fun one to ask you. How many bodily fluids have been on you whilst you've been working?
I don't know. That's I'm sure I'm probably reaching the world record, because I pretty much had them all. At some point, I think.
Okay, so this is the question that comes up a lot, because this is just this has happened to me, and I interview so many people this hasn't happened to. Has anyone thrown up on you? Besides your kids? Kids obviously don't count because kids puke everywhere. But have you had a patient throw up on you?
Other than my prom date?
That's not a patient, Jeff.
Okay. No. Yes. Yeah, I've been thrown up on a few times.
Does that make you sick, or do you not?
I don't seek it out.
You don't have a vomit fetish? That's not your thing?
Well,
okay.
It's not fun, but it's.
Have you ever gotten sick at the job from seeing something, or at the beginning of you working as a doctor?
Well, yeah. I used to moonlight in the ER.
Ooh.
And I saw a 28-year-old girl with a gunshot wound to the face. I mean, you go through that. First of all, I was in the ER working other cases, but I mean, all hands were called to try to help out. So and that was just ghastly. I mean, couldn't get an airway in. It was a military couple, and they both came home from overseas, and apparently
PTSD.
she wanted to end the relationship, and he didn't, so he shot her.
Did she pass?
She did not.
She survived.
She survived.
Which is almost worse.
But he came back and tried to kill her in the hospital, and he was arrested, yeah.
How did he try to kill her in the hospital?
Well, I wasn't there, but the report was he came in with a gun, and security stopped him.
Oh, bless her heart. Bless her heart. So when you saw that, you threw up?
Oh, no, I didn't throw up. But it cured me of moonlighting in the ER.
You were done after that?
Oh, I was done. I walked off and never went back to an ER setting.
Because that was
trauma ER setting.
It's just too much.
Well, I was, I'm a lily-livered guy, and that was just too tough. No, that was too tough stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, was there ever anything that you saw that grossed you out so much you threw up?
No.
Okay. Have you ever fainted from something you've seen? Mm-mm. So you're not really a lily-livered guy, to use your phrase. I mean, I would have.
Okay, if is that how you measure it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the standard.
No, I haven't vomited or passed out. No.
Really? Okay. And what are you able to say the grossest thing? I mean, that's pretty. A facial gunshot wound is pretty intense, but something that's a little more lighthearted that you saw that made you like, oh gosh, I don't want to do this.
Well,
like a big zit or something that someone needed help with.
I mean, there's plenty of bad abscesses and stuff like that. I mean, that's just part of the job.
You normalize things that are not normal, just so you know. For regular folks, these things are not normal.
Yeah, but I mean, if you did this job, it would be, that's just what you do. That's part of it. I mean,
do you think that like if your child, they say this is the kids of physicians or nurses or anybody that works in medicine of any kind, the children end up having to suck it up a little bit more because it's like, is the bone protruding out of your skin? If not, tough, deal with it. Did you find you were a bit harder, or not harder, but a bit more calloused to when people would come to you with injuries in your own family? Well,
it could be. I'll tell you the story of my Michelle, my daughter, who when she was about 3, maybe 4, and we had this little playhouse in our dining room, and it had a swinging door that they could stand on, and then they would climb on the roof. Yeah, I brought them up well. I'm telling you.
Super safe.
Anyway, while she was standing on that door, Evan pulled the door out from under her, and so she fell, right?
Ooh.
So it might have been 1 or 2 days later, she came to Beth and said, "Oh, my wrist hurts." And Beth said, "Oh, well, have your dad look at it." So I looked at it and took it and bent it around, and she was just looking at me, blinking her eyes and nothing. I said, "Well, okay, honey, go on, suck it up, I guess." Well, about 3 days later, she came back to Beth and said, "Oh, my wrist still hurts." And so she took her into the doctor, and it was fractured. She had a green stick fracture.
Oh, what does green stick fracture mean?
Well, it's just there's a growth plate, and it's weakened, and kids will sometimes hit and just slide that right on the growth plate there. Maybe that was an evidence of me having her suck it up a little too much.
Poor Michelle. Oh, bless her. We're just like smiling and looking at you whilst you're messing with her fracture.
I was nominated for Parent of the Year from that.
That year in particular?
Yeah,
Amazing.
It's just another fine example.
Michelle wrote a letter in crayon. "Dear committee."
With her broken hand.
Okay, great. Do you tip?
Oh, yeah.
How much?
20%.
That's standard. Why 20?
Well, I think that's a pretty fair tip.
Do you think the tipping system is fair?
I would rather they get an income, but I certainly want them compensated for the work they do. It's hard work, and we need it. Yeah, I would much rather they get
a living wage
and benefits from that.
Yeah,
and so I think they get cheated from that.
It sets up a hierarchy that is never ever able to be penetrated because you're always taking it a little bit because you're singing for your supper. So,
yeah, you're right.
And do you ever not tip?
No, I always tip.
Coffee shop, Uber drivers, Lyft driver, everywhere you tip?
Yeah, I tip Uber drivers. Of course, I don't tip them 20%.
Sure, yeah.
They in Europe, you tip less because they get paid.
Well, in some cases, it's an insult. When I lived in Spain, it was considered, unless you could leave your change if you had a little bit of change in the dish. But if you left anything more than that you'd be given it. I was handed back money.
Is that right?
And was told, like, we're good. We don't need it.
Stinking money. And get
keep
out of
it. Yeah. But there is I will say, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, there is a trade-off though with service. When we are in a position to have to sing for our supper, we'll sing. So we will do the extra things. Whereas I did find in Europe, getting a bartender's attention was a bit more challenging.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And there is a bit of a trade-off with service, but I agree with you that the model needs to change. Do you ever remember when you were a waiter being stiffed, meaning not tipped at all? Yeah?
Yeah.
What did you, is it just because you just didn't care?
No, I didn't know exactly why, but...
sure. Sometimes there's no reason.
I mean, I'm such a nice guy.
You're
I just can't
so
imagine.
likable. I mean, you are a bit unhinged, though, as we've seen.
How it could have happened, I don't know.
Yeah, again, you probably screamed and flipped a table and created a scene. That's very much your vibe.
It was a tantrum. I'm sure I threw a tantrum.
I'm certain you did, too. Okay. Are you able, in a general sense, since we don't want to get too specific, are you able to describe what would be the worst patient? Not necessarily suggesting you actually saw this type of patient, but a top to bottom bad patient doctor experience, so we can teach the audience how not to be, although we have the most lovely audience on the planet, so none of them do this anyway, but...
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of unpleasant experiences. For example, seeing a fraternity guy 3-4 times a year for venereal disease because he wouldn't wear a condom. Now, that is the kind of thing that you just, I mean, what do? I mean, obviously you got to treat him and you counsel and guide him. But at some point, that's just not appealing. You just don't want anything to do with that, you know? The other people that are difficult, and you have to have in perspective, the people don't come to see me when they are tip-top. Sure. They are sick. They don't feel well. And to hold someone's behavior to a standard that you would accept when they're perfectly healthy is kind of unreasonable. Some of them are just really miserable. So you have to have that in mind. But the people that were the most difficult were the people that had expectations that you couldn't meet and then wouldn't back off, wouldn't understand. You would try to explain to them why whether there's their breathing or their pain or whatever it is, just didn't meet what they had experienced, including seeing subspecialists. I never withheld that. Anybody that didn't get the result that they wanted, I had them get a second opinion with a specialist. I think that's really wise and necessary. But those are the people that would be so difficult. You can't meet their expectation, and yet they keep complaining and being upset and angry.
Could you tell when you were being lied to?
Not really. I mean, that's why you look at the chart a lot, because the usual thing is the druggies, because they are really good at it. Yeah. They're really good at it. And so even when I thought I knew, I could be easily fooled.
Well, that disease is pretty cunning. I mean, you get good at it, I would imagine, to survive with that disease.
Then a lot of people underestimate or underrepresent their illness.
Underrepresent? That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, that's the part that bothers you, okay? I mean, a lot of people complain more than you'd think they might, whatever, but that happens, but you don't really know how they feel. But the people that scared me was, like, for example, when I started working on a computer, I never learned to type, so I had to look at the computer and I couldn't look at them. And then so they would come in for whatever question, and you would go through your series of questions. Have you blacked out? Do you have chest pain? Blah blah blah. Well, a lot of people have had chest pain, and if you're not looking at them, you don't notice hesitation when they say no, right? So if you're looking at them and they go no, you can tell there's something, and you add further questions. But if you're looking here and they say no, you don't know that. So those are the people that you'd be frightened about, because if you miss any warning signals, that might be all you get.
It's an interesting concept, though, to go and sit in front of a physician and minimize, because you've made the appointment, you're there. So clearly you're concerned in regards to something, in theory, unless it's a general checkup.
Yeah, but you have to think about the mental state of the person that comes in.
Sure.
Now, the person that comes in that did everything they can at home, they can't fix it, they're desperate, okay, they're going to express then that's why they're here.
Sure.
Now, the macho stud that gets off the golf course and stomps home and tells his wife that he had some chest pain, and she says, well, get your butt in the doctor. When he comes in to see me, he's only there because of his wife. Otherwise, he'd be there because of himself.
Sure.
So he doesn't think it's a big deal. He just wants to find out that he's perfectly healthy.
He wants you to sign off so he can go home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the guy that you can miss. That's the guy you may not get the warning that you're hoping to get.
That's tough.
Well, everyone has tough parts of their job.
Yeah.
That one's just tricky.
What's the hardest part of being a doctor?
The hardest part?
Yeah.
Losing a patient.
That's what I thought you'd say. Again, everybody, he's a terrible person, as you can tell, and he's very unhinged. Okay, well, that's all the sad stuff. So we're going to go on to the good stuff. We hope you saved room for dessert. What was the nicest thing a patient has done for you whilst you were working? Or an example of something nice that happened if you don't want to call out someone specifically?
Well, there's so many people that are incredibly nice. I mean, I've had people paint paintings for me, build birdhouses, bake, a lot of baked goods. Any time that they would show appreciation, it was really, really nice. I appreciate it. It was fine.
Is it weird to send a doctor a thank you note?
I don't think it's weird. I got a lot of thank you notes.
Did you?
Yeah, I think they're... it's perfectly fine if you... But the thing is, I would not have a thank you note for anything that the physician should be and definitely is expected to do. Okay? You wouldn't go in and have a physical and have someone draw blood and tell you about the results and write him a thank you note for doing what he is supposed to do. Okay.
Okay.
But if the physician does something extra, I had a lady come in for a surgery, and while she was there, I just said, did some other review, not related to the pre-op evaluation, some other review. Well, if you had, your breast exam, your pap smear, well, no. So we went ahead and did it. Well, she had a breast mass, but they cured her. She is still, yeah.
And that was only because you did the series of questions.
That just because, kind of came up, and that's not that's unusual. A lot of docs do it a lot of times, but that time it just caught it. And so she was happy.
Of course, I imagine you saved her life, so I would imagine she was a little excited.
Well, the surgeon probably saved her life.
Okay.
And the cancer
all right,
doctor
Jeff,
saved
we'll
her
keep
life.
going. All right, so those were nice things. I asked about a tip. Can you think of an example of, as a doctor, what you would consider your ideal patient visit from top to bottom that you have to deliver negative news to? Maybe a patient who's finding out that they are diabetic.
Everyone is unique. It's hard for me to say that the perfect patient, because that would pigeonhole them into a response or whatever. Obviously, the person that responds in a serious manner and in a good attitude approaches the treatment that we'd like to pursue for them, whether it's diet for a diabetic or what, you know what I mean? Obviously but that's, a lot of people are that way. It's not exactly a perfect patient, so to speak. That's what you hope.
Are you suggesting that the perfect patient doesn't exist because humans aren't perfect? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Terrible doctor. Okay. What's the best lesson you personally have learned from being a physician?
In terms of lesson meaning my education all the way through, that's aside. But what my patients have showed me is that no matter how humble a person has been brought to because of disease or age, they can find a way to be happy and to enjoy life. And I say that from people that just have had, desperate strokes or a horrible disease that you would say, oh, I wouldn't want to live that way. And yet they are able to find a way to do those things. And it is an astonishing thing to see that. So anyway, that's
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 lovely.
me. That's just, what
Well, I'm interviewing you.
Yeah.
So I want to know
Yeah, that's
you.
true.
I want to know
Yeah.
just you. Don't care about your friends. Sorry. Okay. And what's one piece of advice that you would give to patients who interact with doctors, or is it physicians? I don't know what's the right thing to say, or anyone in the medical profession? What's a piece of advice that would be helpful for them to know?
Well, I mean, for themselves, they should make sure that if they get a relationship with the physician, they should be able to communicate what they need. And then if they don't get that, they need to take it further. Okay? So a lot of people, talk about, oh, that doctor is a real pompous, but he's a good doctor. Well, I don't really know any pompous, whats that are good doctors because they're not listening. They're all about themselves. And in my mind, you really have to communicate really well to be a good doctor. And if you don't, if you have expectations of how that patient is supposed to behave and treat them, haughtily because of that, that doesn't mean they're a good doctor. Maybe they can practice some good medicine, but I find that unappealing.
So to distill the advice, it would be find a physician with whom you can communicate openly and who you feel is listening to you.
And that you trust their decisions.
Okay.
You got to be able to communicate and trust their decisions. And if you can't find that, move on.
Did you ever have a patient say, I hear what you're recommending, but my gut is telling me to do fill in the blank, and then they go do that other thing?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
And how do you handle that?
Well, really, that's part of the job. You kind of brought it up earlier, but how many patients are perfect? Nobody. Now, who perfectly takes the prescriptions and behavioral advice that you give them? Nobody. Nobody's perfect. None of them do it. So you can't expect them to do that. You can simply urge them to do better and better and better, or meet whatever goal you need for them and work with them. And that will lead you to your conflicts when they're not reaching their goals and you have to redo things. And that's where a patient-physician relationship gets trying. If they are not responding to the recommendations, is it because they reject your opinion or whatever and they need to go elsewhere? Or is it that no matter who takes care of them, they're not going to do that because they think it's okay to go that route? And a lot of people have a degree of each in them, I'll bet you have certain diseases that you desperately do not want to die from.
Yes.
And others, well, okay, if I got to go, that's okay.
Yes.
But see, that would shape your behavior. Because if you go into a doctor's office and we're talking about a disease that, well, it's okay if I die from that. I don't want to. I don't think I will. Well, then you're not going to behave in a panic, strict, change your whole life way necessarily. Okay. On the other hand, if you go in and a topic comes up that you are desperately afraid of, you're likely to change your whole life. I mean, just the power of that.
Sure.
But again, that's shaped by you and your experiences. And a physician has to know that and work with people. And if you can't communicate that this disease is horrible, you can't let this happen to you, you got to get them to another doctor. I mean, someone has to help them, And
it's an interesting point that I hadn't thought of, that and this is true, I guess, with all of our interactions with everyone for all time, but that our fear informs so much more of what we're willing to be taught.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if I'm afraid of X, then if you tell me I have to walk backwards for 3 miles a day and then I will not get X, guess who's walking backwards 3 times a day?
If you're terrified enough, you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And have you had patients who were resistant and finally listened to your advice and survived as a result? Or not advice, your medical recommendations?
Well, no one survives forever.
What?
But some are
Breaking
still alive
news.
because they have, followed the path. Yeah, definitely.
Too humble to even say it. Okay, well, how can people get in touch with you, Jeff? Are you comfortable sharing, and I can edit this part out, but about your music, because I made reference to it in the bio, but
sure.
Are you comfortable? Okay.
Yeah.
So Dr. Jeff writes and performs music, and it's lovely, and it's available on YouTube. And are you putting it anywhere else, or is it just sort of out in the world?
I am working with an organization called Taxi. I don't know if I told you that, but
you told me, but you didn't tell the audience.
But it's an organization that gets involved in trying to place. I have written some music, but I'm not a live performing artist. It's not my thing. So,
but you like writing songs,
yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, I contacted them and have asked them to look. I was hoping to get some of my songs done by a musician or a band that would do them right, instead of the way I do them.
Which is still good.
But unfortunately, I've been kind of universally rejected so far. But
that's horseshit. We're going to figure it out.
Life is, hope springs eternal. I'm sure I'm going to be the next, superstar in no time at all.
Don't be sarcastic. Okay, audience. For those of you that are performing artists or recording artists and have a vested interest in this area, you should look up, how do they find, what is your YouTube page just Jeff Armitage, or what is your...
Yeah, it's Jeff Armitage, and then the song, I'm so little known that you might have to have a song to get there, because YouTube, you get, and I'll be...
In the algorithm,
8 millionth in line, and they may not get there. But,
Can you spell your name for the audience, please, so they can find you?
Yeah, Jeff, and then it's Armitage.
Okay, so they can find your music there, and it is very good, and you should all go listen. And then are you on social media that you want people to find you on, or are you good with just the YouTube? Or do you want people to not be able to get in touch with you? What do you prefer?
Well, I'm on Facebook, but I never go to Facebook. I release my music on Facebook and then run away and hide, because I don't, but I don't look at Facebook or anything.
Okay, so they should find your YouTube page.
Yeah, the YouTube, you can leave a comment there if you hate it or whatever. You can say.
The level of humility. He is an MD. He went to school for 62 years to be able to do his job, and yet still, the number of doctors that are so humble. Wouldn't let me call him Dr. Armitage. Very weird for me.
Well, I'm retired. I'm a has-been.
Oh, God. He also said, what did you say? You were just taking up space or something like that when you emailed me?
Dead weight. Just ask Beth. She'll tell you.
I love Beth, and she deeply loves you, and there is just no way that she says that about you. And hello to your lovely children who played Ghost in the Graveyard with me for most of my adolescence, which was really fun. Yeah. Also, hi to the Rogers, whose yard we also used. We were able to run across the street because we live in a small town. It's awesome. Well, folks, we are going to drop your checks now. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to help us out here at Service from Hell, we'd love to have you subscribe, rate, and or review the show wherever you listen. It will help us reach more people that need to be schooled on the art of being kind, and will be catharsis for those of us still working in the industry. And if you want to get in touch with us here directly at Service from Hell, send us your receipts at servicefromhellpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Remember, if you can't afford to tip, you can't afford to go out. So don't be garbage and be good to people. It's easier that way. Thanks, Jeff.
That was fun.
Outro. Which is also a symbol you're failing. So if I have to change batteries, you've failed twice.
There's so many ways I can fail.
I'm setting you up.
I should be writing these down.
That's true. Really? You really should. You'd be more focused. Okay. Interested in helping support the growth of this podcast? Thank you so much. Please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/The Kate Gaffney. That's patreon.com/THEKATEGAFFNEY.